Captain's log. Stardate 3145.6. After the harrowing events at the hands of Khan Noonien Singh, the mad dictator from Earth's bloody past, the crew is preparing to return to our patrol route.
Jim, are you sure you don't want to come with me down to sickbay? You were in that decompression chamber long enough to kill you.
No, Bones. I think I've spent enough time down here for one day. Give me some additional time before I have to see sickbay again. Or that chamber. I'm still trying to process everything that happened over the past day. Bones, I don't know what surprised me more. That Khan turned out to be one of the most ruthless men to ever walk the earth, and that he was capable of taking over a starship with such brutality, or that Lieutenant McGivers gave up her Starfleet commission to live with him.
Well, McGivers, of course. Not a lot of mystery to Khan after he choked me in sickbay. Easy to see why Earth banned genetic engineering. Real-world experiences like these are quite different than Starfleet's ethics class.
What?
Oh, come on, Jim. Did you sleep through every Academy ethics lecture?
Bones, did you just say Khan choked you?
Jim, am I going to have to give you a hearing test? Are you sure that decompression chamber didn't rupture your eardrum?
Bones, what in the hell are you talking about?
Christ, Jim, settle down. Shortly after you gave your sage psychoanalysis to McGivers in sickbay, you know, the safety of the entire vessel might depend on the performance of a single crew member. While I was sitting there doing my reports, apparently Khan had woken up and, well, you know that red felt board I have on the wall across from the biobeds? The one I hang all of my scalpels, speculums, and bone saws? Well, Khan grabbed that 10-inch knife we used to cut the Thanksgiving turkey last year. When I came back in to check on him, he grabbed me by the neck and put the knife to my throat.
He did what?
Well, he started asking questions about where he was. I told him he should either choke me or cut my throat. He seemed upset that I was ignoring his questions, demanded I summon you. So then I told him he should cut my carotid artery. He said I was a brave man. I told him I was just trying to avoid an argument, but I'll tell you the truth, Jim. I'll be damned if I'm going to be bullied by any patient in my sickbay. And I called you down to see him.
To hell with your sickbay. He took over the damn ship. Bones, Khan choked you and put a knife to your throat in his first waking moments. And I'm only hearing about this now? Not before we all had dinner. Not before you called me down to talk to him in the room with your damned cutlery displaying hanging off the wall. You're telling me you knew Khan was a violent lunatic the whole time?
Well, it's hard to read that situation any other way, Jim. What are you going to tell McGivers' family?
Bones! To hell with McGivers! He overthrew the ship! He put me in a death chamber! And you're sitting here like the cat who swallowed the canary because you willfully let the most dangerous man we have ever faced walk around my ship after trying to kill you without so much as a word to security! Or me! Bones! I just disciplined McGivers in front of you about how one person's bad decision can doom an entire ship! Why didn't you tell anyone his first act was attempted murder?
Damn it, Jim! I'm a doctor, not a snitch.
It's all fun and games until that James Horner soundtrack just kicks in here on V'ger Please, a heinous trip at Warp 5. My name is Joseph.
Don't put a handle on the front of my spacesuit unless you plan on jerking me around. I'm your co-host, Peter.
Peter, this is a special episode we're recording as a consequence of the support we receive on Patreon. We really appreciate those folks, and this was their idea, and I have never been happier for it, because what did we review?
It's hopefully around Valentine's Day. It's everybody's Valentine, everybody's favorite, Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. What fortuitous series of events, because we've pushed this thing back several times. Hitting Wrath of Khan as Valentine's Day as a little love letter was cute and all, but we had just done the augments,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
It's getting brought up again in our normal broadcast schedule because we are doing the
We're in the middle of the Klingon episodes about
which is
their-
more
their-
genetic engineering shit, right?
Mhm.
And I'm catching up on our back catalog where we're actually going over the augments right now. So this is all of the genetic engineering misadventures of Star Trek pre-TNG wrapped into 1 week for me. Oh, and then to prep for this, I actually went back and I watched Space Seed, which I'd never really sat and watched in its entirety.
Oh, good. Okay, so I had somewhat recently watched Space Heat again, so I did not feel compelled to go back to watch it. By the way, just to frame this up entirely, release date of this film was June 4th, 1982. Screenplay uncredited.
I was 1 month old.
Responsible. I was not yet born. I would be born a year later. Nicholas Meyer, story by Harv Bennett and Jack B. Swords, directed by Nicholas Meyer. This movie is the reason Star Trek exists today, and it has been years since I've watched it, and what a treat to be reminded that this movie really is just an excellent film in every possible way and created such a durable sense of Star Trek that it basically had 20 years of continuity after this. 21. Mid 2000s was Enterprise went away, and that's probably kind of the end of the era of Trek this started.
Such an important movie, such a good movie, that it's no surprise it doesn't appear on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, finding this thing to fucking watch was kind of a pain in the ass. I'm lucky I own it. So really,
I'm lucky I was able to go down to the local Blockbuster and rent it since I could not legally stream it.
That's obviously what one would do. They would go to the Blockbuster that's in Oregon, the one that's left.
No, I just went right down the road. Frame this thing real quick, right? So Star Trek came and went. There was a little letter writing campaign to get some more Star Trek out, and then nothing. And then Star Wars came along and set the world on fire. And they pushed out the motion picture, which we have opted not to review because it is very long. And while I can appreciate it from an artistic standpoint, specifically the one with the Tron soundtrack laid over it, which is hella good, and I'm happy to give anybody that link. It was a flop. I don't know. Was it a flop?
It was not as successful as they were hoping. So Star Trek the Motion Picture made money, but it had quite a large production budget relative to budgets at the time. In fact, obviously the memory alpha on this is pretty extensive, and I tried to do my research in advance on some of these like production details.
Good, because I knew you would.
Well, you know what? We've all have our strengths here. My strength is attention to very nerdy detail, and the motion picture was shot
free time to read that stuff.
Yeah, okay. A lack of children is my superpower.
Yes.
So, motion picture was made about $25 million. This was made on half that. Okay. And it made money, but it didn't make the money they were hoping. And I
think it's similar to what we see right now, where there's like Marvel movies and shit have come out that had a strong opening weekend, but you're not getting people returning to the seats. And again, you got to compare it against Star Wars, which was putting the same asses in those same seats over and over and over again and selling $1 bajillion worth of toys. So Paramount's got a big fat black eye after motion picture.
And, it was partially like also 2001 A Space Odyssey was more what the motion picture was about. Like it had that more very mystery feel to it. And it looked expensive, to be honest. Like that movie looks like it spent that kind of money on its production budget when you think about all the extras and just how many sets there were. And it was just over bloated. It just was more style than substance. When it really arrived at the substance, it didn't quite connect the same way. So they wanted another shot at it, but they had to basically stuff Gene Roddenberry into a corner because his ideas were not compatible. They were too 60s. They were too out of date. And ultimately, this is the product of Harv Bennett and Nicholas Meyer more than anyone else. Harv Bennett knew nothing about Trek before he got into this. He watched it all. There wasn't much to watch.
Well, hey, look at that.
Yeah.
Voyager writers who never watched a single fucking episode before putting pen to paper. When you say that Roddenberry was 260s in his thoughts, is that what you would call motion picture by contrast? That it was, because that didn't really stick off as like campy 60s so much as exactly what you said. It felt 2001 Space Odyssey.
It was very 70s, I would say, which obviously since it was released in 78 makes a lot of sense. But the vibe here is so dramatically different on every level from the very first shot in the film that it really comes down to one paragraph that I'm going to read here from the Memory Alpha that I think describes exactly how we wound up where we wound up. Okay.
Hit me.
And it has to do with Nicholas Meyer, who is the uncredited screenplay author, because he was the one in the end who had to clean this up and turn it into what it was, because it was just dev hell, right? All these ideas. Roddenberry's first idea got rejected. Paramount put him out to pasture, and all boiled down to this. I had the haziest notion of what Star Trek was because I didn't really watch the show on television. I finally latched onto the idea that Captain Kirk and his friends were at really outer space series of novels that I loved as a kid by C.S. Forrester called Captain Horatio Hornblower. And so I said, okay, this is Hornblower in outer space. I got it. And suddenly, Star Trek turns into British naval drama. And that's what this is.
Yep.
And it checks out from every creative choice, every acting choice, that the costumes, the approach to space combat, the more rigid militarism within the Federation itself, just the
heady quotes.
Yes, the heavily philosophical element of the plot. This is a Star Trek that it's taking itself very, very seriously from the jump. This is not jokey 60s time. This is not man in a rubber suit time. This is not, fun musical bleep bloop do off to the next adventure time. This is, Master and Commander. Like this is British naval drama.
And again, to be fair, compared to the motion picture, that was not man in a rubber suit bleep bloop either.
Right.
This, in addition to everything that you just said, was very grounded. This is a story that focuses on life and death and growing old and human emotions, a midlife crisis, and a guy with a super nuke who is pissed that you left him to die.
Just the classic revenge story, right? Like the motivations of the people involved here are not terribly foreign, right? Like you said, it's grounded both in how it feels and what your characters are going through. It's not a bunch of techno babble nonsense that is impenetrable. It's feeling regret, feeling old, feeling out of place, feeling hate, feeling revenge, attempting to overcome, these mistakes that we've made.
I have not watched Wrath of Khan in its entirety. I've seen all the relevant clips and stuff, but sitting down beginning to end, this is the first time I've ever done that. I actually watched the director's cut, which was what I was able to find at
which is very good that you did.
Yeah,
and
that's one that's at Blockbuster.
It is stunning that it's not a lot of that gets added to the film, but all of those little shots they added had just a little bit of dialogue that helped the movie a ton.
What struck me watching this was the subplot about Kirk doubting his life choices, wondering if where he goes from there. He's achieved career success, having become an admiral. At the end of Motion Picture, or
he was an admiral before at the beginning of Motion Picture.
Mm.
So this is him now in a desk job and not enjoying it.
All of this stuff I've seen a dozen other times in Trek, right? Most notably in Generations, where Picard's going through all this stuff. They touch on it again in Picard season 3. Of course, was it Into Darkness that had Khan and Benedict Cumberbatch?
Correct.
Like really and I thought Chris Pine did a pretty nice job rehashing all the stuff, but seeing it here presented for what is effectively the first time Star Trek goes down this path with its main characters. I don't want to say it makes the other attempts derivative, but this is clearly establishing what will go on to become a Trek trope that resonates very well. And kudos to Shatner for being able to lay that on.
Well, let's not bury the lead. Anyone who says that William Shatner isn't a talented actor can just go jump off a bridge. This movie is incredible because he is incredible in it. He delivers on a performance with Kirk that is on the money in his bearing, in his relationship with everyone around him, how he deals with the circumstances that he is presented with. He is arresting in every scene he's in this film. It's nuts.
I'm curious how Shatner felt about the core themes in this movie, and I assume that Shatner is a proud and vain man who was certainly a very handsome man in his 20s, 30s, or whatever the fuck he was back in original series. And now they're bringing him in for a movie and like, hey, you're the star and this is going to be a great badass action movie. And you're an old man now and you're going to get fucking spectacles because you can't read. And, you know, you're not going to be jumping around swashbuckling and shit. You're going to be wrestling with the fact that you never had kids and that you hate your job and that your life is full of regret and you're old and fat.
Like, well, apparently he embraced it wholeheartedly. Like, he's like,
life imitates art. Okay.
Got it. I'm on it, boys.
But at a certain level, you know, hey, here I was in the 60s rolling around, you know, wrestling broads, beating up rubber suit guy, being a handsome hero. And now, like, I got to worry about my knees creaking. You know, I'm curious if he looked at the script and said, wow, there's a lot of new space for me to play in here, and I'm excited to explore these facets of this character. If he's at some level like, I don't want to be old. I don't want to be grandpa.
I mean, I think that creeped into some of the sequels. I think Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, is particularly guilty of this, and that is not coincidentally the one that he himself directed, William Shatner. But in this, I don't know if he had to be convinced or he just simply saw the opportunity and was presented to him and maximized it. But I mean, I have a new appreciation having watched this film for the first time from a critical perspective, right? I've always enjoyed this movie. This is no kidding, the very first Star Trek thing I ever saw that I recall seeing, I should say, watching this with my dad. This is one of my dad's favorite movies. Just absolutely love Wrath of Khan.
We've talked about this before too, right? That Star Trek movies
my wife wanted to watch this with me. It's her favorite Star Trek thing. She was into it.
I made my wife watch it with me, and she was a couple in when we started. And I would say it was towards the back half when shit starts getting real that she actually got drawn in and came out with pretty pleasant things to say. But as you've said before, Star Trek movies need to be accessible.
Yeah.
The TV shows are for the nerds. Movies need to come out and make fucking money. And it cannot be a situation where you need to have watched 7 seasons of something to enjoy a 2-hour production for whatever movie tickets cost right now. People need to come in, get everything that they need to enjoy this story up front. And you got to have enough to keep people there with action and drama and boobs or whatever is going on, because you're not relying on people like you and me that can sit there and watch a terrible episode of Star Trek Voyager and go, well, that was a terrible waste of time. But it's pretty cool that now I know about the time that Tuvok went off to go pray his emotions away.
Right.
That's good headcanon. I'm glad we got that now.
No one wants to pay $15 for that. You know, like not happening. So yeah, this movie is very accessible. It is enhanced by knowing who these people are and what their relationship with them are. It is particularly enhanced if you watched Space Seed. Yet, it is so elemental and so grounded, and they do a great job of illustrating what it is they're trying to do here, that even if you really don't have all of that context, you know Admiral Kirk is someone of incredible importance. He is feeling that he is wasting away in a job that is writing a desk when he clearly wants to be in the field. This guy, whoever he is, he fucking hates him. And they're going to have a conflict, and I'm going to get to watch. And it does that very well. And
also, when he's looking at the script, I think at a certain level, Shatner and everybody else has to realize motion picture didn't go as well as it was supposed to. Trouble in the Water. Big Boss, the great bird of the galaxy, Gene Roddenberry, does not have both hands on the wheel for this thing. There's heavy studio involvement. There has to be a knowledge that this thing's going to be do or die. And if this movie flops, this shit's over. Forget about any more paychecks.
And straight out off the top here, before they started shooting this, Leonard Nimoy intended to do this film and then he'd be done with Star Trek. He did not want to come back to this anymore. He was going to do this, take the money, and bounce. And it was a late decision in production that he enjoyed making this movie. He knew it was going to be good. Everyone involved knew this was going to be good. That he said, let's shoot a scene that gives me a backdoor way in for a sequel because I'm interested now. So
Moops.
Yeah. So,
but why does Spock? Spoiler alerts, guys. Big one coming up.
Yeah, big old spoiler.
Was Spock dying in the script initially, or did Nimoy say
Spock was always going to die in the script? He wanted the character to die.
He did. So he said, "Kill me in this thing," and it wasn't like he saw the script. Oh, I'm gonna die. Great, I'm done with this forever. Because if it was, hey guys, I'll do this movie, but I want you to kill me so I'm done and I can just go do Bilbo Baggins songs 24/7, or the fucking what's that Bigfoot show he was on? Strange Mystery Unknown.
Yeah. I know that one.
Whatever that bullshit. It's that synth music. How can you say no? If that was him saying, Michelle, what's her name? Ro Laren?
Oh, yeah, Michelle Forbes.
He pulled a Forbes and was like, I'm doing this, but you need to kill me. Had he not been salty up front and expecting this thing to kind of flop and not having had fun, they wouldn't have killed him. And that would have been like a quarter of why this is a great movie gone.
Of course. The movie is structured so that Spock dies in the end. Like, when the scene happens there pivotably at the end, when they have disabled the Reliant, Khan has started the countdown timer on Genesis. It's just one of many moments in this film where the small, mature artistry of it is what elevates it. They're having a conversation about main power being offline and why, and Spock kind of turns his chair and he just kind of looks into the middle distance and obviously has some kind of revelation about what he has to do and then leaves without saying anything. And so when you see him down there having chosen to sacrifice himself to like fix the ship, it's like, oh yes, that's exactly what's supposed to happen, right? It's not a shock that he has chosen to do this. They don't try to make it seem like a surprise. You watch him slowly make all of the decisions necessary to do it. You tell him to how, everyone's trying to warn him. He's like, no, I'm not even paying attention to that. I have a job to do right now. Yeah.
Also, I just had a whole scene where I was talking about the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few, right? We've already laid the emotional groundwork that logic dictates sacrifice sometimes.
But
speaking of logic, old Kirstie Alley there, huh?
Yes. So probably the biggest star of the 1980s, Kirstie Alley, someone who became extraordinarily famous because of Cheers, but her first on-screen appearance anywhere, this movie, as Lieutenant Saavik. I think she did a great job actually playing a Vulcan, which is a lot to say since she was only basically like, the third person to do it. It's Spock and Sarek. They were in the original series. And now... T'Pau for one scene.
Mm-hmm.
And then Saavik. And it's like, Kirstie Alley did not have a lot of game tape to review of like, how do I play a Vulcan? There's really only one person to have that conversation with on Earth, right? Like, Leonard, how do you do this, right? How tell me how to do what you do. And she does a pretty damn good job of being a Vulcan. Very dialed in.
Quick side note, as I did go back and watch Space Seed, and I have not watched a lot of TOS, it is striking to me watching Enterprise. So, chronologically, it's Enterprise and then TOS. Seeing the formation of the Federation and the involvement of the Andorians, blah, 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 blah. Watching original series, like how human the crew is with only one alien, it's just jarring, right? And of course they fix that with, and that's special effects constraints for a budget show.
Yeah, fix it with the animated series, right?
Well, like fix it, and with Strange New Worlds or whatever. But bringing in a second Vulcan, all of the headcanon from Enterprise now active on me. The Vulcan hesitation about getting involved in Starfleet because of stigma or whatever. Her character, very interesting. I can sit there and nitpick, is she really portraying Vulcan the right way after another 20 years of people coming through and Tim Russ and everybody else like refining it? Does she show emotions? Is she a little too cheeky? Yeah, but she's getting the point across, right?
Yeah, she is.
I've got a feeling she's there primarily as eye candy.
They don't lean into it too hard. There's literally one scene where she's eye candy, kind of, and it's still pretty modest. But I think that it was a appropriately restrained way to put an attractive woman on screen.
Right, and that's the curious thing to me is you're telling the story, you're putting in the people that develop this cult following from the TV show, and you're like, all right, great, we got Uhura, we got Chekhov, we got Sulu, we got Scotty. We need another person on the bridge. Let's sideline these other fools. Give me a girl Vulcan. Let's put her in. And you could say they did the same thing in motion picture, because you had whatever the Dalton lady was,
mm-hmm.
and then the Proto Riker, whatever is that Decker, right?
Decker, yeah.
So you're already interjecting these other people in an already full cast. Like, you don't need more people in the crew. But what I see in her, I think, is the template that will be finalized with 7 of 9 and then T'Pol. And that is hot robot lady, Mark 1.
She is. She's the prototype hot robot lady. And you can tell that Gene wasn't involved in the film. That she's not ever sexually exploited in any particular way. With one exception. There's a scene where, by the way, we're going to kind of jump around this rather than just tell the whole, it's an hour and 45-minute movie. And everyone
go watch it because
go watch it, right? Like, we're going to review it. We're going to talk about all the things about it that were particularly striking or interesting. But if you want a plot summary of the most famous Star Trek thing ever made, no, I'm not interested in doing that for you. There's a scene in the elevator in the turbo lift, rather, when they are, Bones calls it the damn elevator, so sorry about that, but where she's in her off-duty frock with her hair down. She comes in and Kirk is on one side and she's on the other. And he remarks Lieutenant, are you wearing your hair differently? And she says, it's still regulation. And then Kirk says, I see. And then you just see him check her out up and down just once, right? And then suddenly she just, turns the turbo lift off and is like, no, I want to talk to you more about how I fucked up the Kobayashi Maru. So you're done flirting with me. And that was it. That's the whole sexual tension of the whole film, is that moment.
I was reading what the differences were between the director's cut that I got from Blockbuster and the theatrical release. And that was one of the scenes that was touched on. And it wasn't actually in regards to that. Apparently there's a third version that was the TV aired version.
Mm-hmm.
And they cut that scene closer in and sequenced it different to put a lot more innuendo on it. I'd be curious to see what not the made for TV, but the TV edit on that ended up looking like. Kobayashi Maru. Is this the first time we've heard that?
Yes. This is where this concept comes from. A real theme of the movie, when you think about it.
The unwinnable situation.
Yeah. I mean, the way that it starts, Saavik is tested. Savick falls for the trap that is ultimately in place here, destroys the simulator room. We have the dramatic reveal, right? And that beginning of that simulator scene is so important to this movie setting its vibe too. We're in. This is not the 60s Enterprise. It's dark. It's a little grim. Everyone's got very stuffy British naval uniforms on. We're doing things that seem more like I'm piloting a vessel rather than just kind of cruising through space, right? This feels got that feel like I'm in hostile waters in its World War II and 1943 vibe.
Visually, real quick, the bridge, a lot of like jet molded plastic.
Yeah.
Solid pieces of plastic they had molded to make it look like there's like pipes or conduiting or whatever. Part of it made me really think like Blockade Runner Star Wars. But the more I looked at it, the more the bridge reminded me of the Nostromo from Alien.
That makes a lot of sense given the era too. That was just kind of like the vibe in science fiction.
Right, like, you know what? We don't want smooth drywall. We want shit going on. We want this to look
like a machine.
Busy.
Yeah.
But we don't have either the budget or the set making abilities. And it's, you know, it's interesting too. You're talking about budget. Looking at this movie this movie production bridge that they have, it looks kind of cheap and shitty in a lot of ways. The chairs, like Picard's remake of the Enterprise D for a TV show that was broadcast on the web looked better than this. And it goes back to everything we're saying about Enterprise. You get the budget constraints with Star Trek and it becomes your friend. There's chairs behind desks. It looks like a bridge. Great. We don't need to go super in depth on it. We understand what it is conceptually. Now give us the important part, and that's the dialogue going on around these hokey looking set pieces.
When Savick fails the test, and it's like not terribly complex, right? Kobayashi Maru sends the distress message. They're in the neutral zone. If you go in, you're violating the treaty. If you don't, you let them die. Right? And she goes in, place gets blown up. Kirk, the very first scene with Kirk here, as he, you know, the rest of the recruits get dismissed. Savick very interestingly, like, assumes a position of attention next to the captain's chair, knowing that like she's about to get reamed for having failed. Right. So again, like the vibe is this is a much more rigid and militaristic hierarchy than we're used to seeing. Like the original series was decent at like ranks and like respect and all of that mattering, but it wasn't like trying to lean into it too hard. Everything was still a little loosey goosey 60s, everyone having a good time.
In fact, Space Seed, which I just watched, when Kirk does go to chew McGivers out about misbehaving on the away team mission where they pick Khan up off the Botany Bay, he calls her in to give her the little talk that we gloss over in our intro that hopefully you enjoyed. Yeah. And she doesn't like clap back, but she interrupts him and then gives her entire spiel, which in any military, you know, would have been a hard shutdown. Certainly not the case what we're seeing here by her body language and other stuff. We are in and this is really stressed. Later on when the Genesis Project group, what's his son's name? This is a Star Trek podcast, by the way, folks. This is two guys that can pull facts out of their ass, and we're both stumped because this fucking clown's so forgettable. Anyways, when Kirk's son gets huffy puffy that Reliant's coming to take Genesis, instantly Starfleet is not an exploratory body. It's not a scientific coalition. Starfleet is the military. And that's what we're getting here in this scene between Savick and Kirk, is a military subordinate showing respect to a superior flag officer.
Yeah, and it's David, by the way, but yeah, Merrick Butler isn't exactly.
Does he ever become? We'll save him for later.
Yeah, it might be the only weak part of the film. But as you said, like this is a junior officer, a flag officer is about to yell at her as far as she's aware. And it's not, though. It is, she asked to speak candidly because she's pissed, because she's like, that test was bullshit. There was no way to win. And just the way the scene is shot. She's standing there. Kirk is on the raised part of the bridge behind her. Starts at one part of her shoulder after she questions it. There was no way to win. And he just kind of stops and kind of looks down at her and say, every captain might face a no-win scenario. Has that thought not occurred to you? She says no. Continues walking forward, goes to the other shoulder, looks back down at her again and says, how we deal with death is just as important as how we deal with life. Wouldn't you agree? And she says, as I mentioned, this thought had not occurred to me. And he says, now you have something else to think about. Carry on, right? This conversation's over. You had your moment to protest. I humored it. I've told you, like, you've missed the point of the test. All right. You should consider what the point of this was. Go back on your duties. This is over, right? Just very clean, very interesting. And like Kirk in it, like, is explaining, like, shit is different. I'm different. The circumstances are different. You're in for a ride here.
Kobayashi Maru will be gone to become canonized as a Starfleet Academy exercise. And speaking of Academy, it was cool watching this, especially with the intro and the music, which real low energy intro. And I don't know if it's just a byproduct of the time, but all those credits going, and I was like, man, do they learn nothing from fucking TOS? Like, you need to jump into the goddamn movie, and too low energy. But they're playing the music, then the Kobayashi Maru brought me right back to the Super Nintendo Starfleet Academy days, man.
Oh, of course. I mean, this thing has become such a critical part of like the Star Trek canon,
right,
in every possible way. And I think the way most accessible to you and I, given our age and our predilection for games, is through the Starfleet Command, Starfleet Academy PC game, which was excellent for its time.
Absolutely. The situation here, so Kirk's gone off, he's the admiral. Spock got promoted to captain. Some of the crew is still sticking around. Chekhov's off on the Reliant. And Enterprise is being retrofitted again, and at this point,
that it's just being used as a training vessel. So what goes a little unexplained, since this is all new concept, right? We've never had a conversation about Starfleet Academy before, really. We've never seen it. We've never seen cadets. So we've got to kind of introduce this concept, right? Of like, there is an academy where these people are trained, right? And they probably have what you do in the Navy, which is you are, a midshipman in the Naval Academy, and you go serve on vessels during your summers, and you start to get practical experience being at sea while you're training to be an officer. So, Gene Roddenberry having some military background, other people this era, a lot of these creatives are themselves military veterans. They know this, so they incorporate that into this. But they don't necessarily feel like they have to explain every detail, like, how does it work? How many years are you in? Why is, like, Saavik appear to be a lieutenant? Is she, like, in war college, and this is, like, her getting leadership training while everyone else is very fresh-faced and look like they might be in that, like, 18 to 21-year range where they're literally still in school to know how to be officers? We know there is one character that's a midshipman. Like, we don't get a ton of explanation of what it is, but it's enough to know they're all about to go on a training cruise, and Enterprise is the ship that is going to be training them. And that is why it's still captained by Spock and still has several senior officers on board.
Again, this is all pre-TNG, and TNG really did a great job fleshing out Starfleet as an expanded organization.
Yeah.
Other admirals, other ships, adding the fun of, like, variety of ships. Reliant was a real big deal in this because that was the first real cool-looking Starfleet ship other than Constitution class that they got to see. But, at no point do they really ever refer to Enterprise, to my knowledge, to the Enterprise under Kirk as the flagship of the Federation, right?
Well, Kirk does not technically command a vessel. So
I just mean, it's
not
Captain
like Spock's command.
It's not like they're like, hey, here's arguably our best ship with the most successes. Let's pull it off the line and put it on training duty from now on. It's not like that much of a system shock. Although, to your point, hey, things are real chill. Life is great in the Federation right now. Pull an Enterprise. That's the best of the best. And this would be a great place to really start cutting some new kids' teeth.
Exactly. Okay, you've already done 2 5-year missions. You've been a huge galactic success. Yeah, let's have you come
Fought
back and
Ghost Abe Lincoln or whatever the fuck that was.
and then come back and train the next generation how to do whatever it is you're doing, right? Like, I actually think it makes a ton of sense that even if it's still technically the flagship of the Federation, then it might be, relegated to these duties at this point.
Especially, again, during peacetime. And that's appears to be where the Federation is at right now. This is a good time.
So
the uniforms.
I love the 23rd century uniforms. I always have. I like the stuffy British red and white look. It's striking. It looks futuristic without being ridiculous. Sharp, well designed. Apparently, they had to use a very special form of Italian sewing needle to make those fucking turtlenecks with that texturing, which is why you don't see them after these movies when they do these uniforms.
Really?
Yes. So, as we know, as long-term Star Trek fans, and particularly fans of TNG, these uniforms got reused when they did yesterday's Enterprise because they were still using the 23rd century uniforms when they're on the Enterprise C, right?
Picard's wearing that uniform on the Stargazer prior to taking over Enterprise. So, the uniforms are half the fun of Star Trek for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because now it's at a point where there is a different uniform every fucking episode between Lower Decks, Picard, whatever. Different, the California class has its own dedicated uniform and this and that. But for all the uniform changeover in modern Trek, like everything from Wrath of Khan until 2 years before Encounter at Farpoint, they're using these motherfuckers. And I agree. They look great. Shout out to the Strange New Worlds Future Pike.
Oh yeah, the Future Pike version of this was hot. I was great. Like, give me that. Give me more of that.
And that's how you take an excellent uniform here and really zazz it up nice. But big departure. These aren't guys in long sleeve t-shirts anymore.
No mini skirts to be fucking seen around this joint. Absolutely not. But what I was going to say, like when they use these for the Enterprise C, they didn't have turtlenecks because they didn't have access to the needle. Well, there was only one in the entire West Coast. It was a 50-year antique. So they just went without them for that. And the ones that they still had, like if you fit them, they'll use them, but like
important people make new only.
Ones. So love the uniforms, love the look, love the feel. Yeah, as you said, everyone's accounted for except for Chekhov, who is the XO of the Reliance, which is a Miranda-class vessel. Let's talk about that for a second, because you want to talk about a ship design that has shown up basically everywhere in Trek ever since. They've gotten a lot of use out of that.
First of all, if I understand correctly, it was built wrong, and that the initial concept art was viewed upside down, that the Miranda class was supposed to have the nacelles above the saucer, and the decision maker saw below it kind of like that sled configuration. It was like, oh great, cool, let's do this.
And that's a much better choice. That was a mistake that was better than the original idea.
Like I said, this is, I think, the first real other Federation ship we've seen that looks fucking cool. Goal that you have to make a friendly ship that's going to go up against your hero ship. That's not going to be as cool or as big as your hero ship, but can still give the hero ship a run for its money when it comes under enemy.
And it has to look threatening without making it look out of place. Which it kind of does. It looks a little bit more like it can fight.
They give it that photon torpedo backpack. So it's kind of like this, I don't want to say scorpion, but just like, hey, we're out here doing our thing, and we've got a big fucking gun. So, yeah, we're just doing whatever it is Mirandas do, but we will fuck you up. And we've got this whole torpedo array that not even Enterprise has. Watch out. But the design language on it.
And again, like you say, a lot of the theme here is Starfleet is the military, right? And this is a ship that looks more militaristic, right? Like than very rather friendly sort of profile of the Enterprise, which doesn't really seem to have much in the way of visible weapons when you really think about it. This actually looks far more prepared to be in conflict.
Miranda's a great looking ship, and it's fun looking at the design language. You've got the Federation saucer, right? which is your people part, and then it gets rid of the deflect, which same deal as the. No, I take that back. That's not the same deal, because in the Nebula they kind of fixed it. There's still a deflector. There's no deflector on the Miranda class, which is maddening once your eyes are open to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's before they kind of knew what the fuck they were doing with that. You know, like I totally understand why there's no visible deflector dish on this, because they just
It
hadn't
wouldn't look
conceived
good.
enough like necessary sort of genre of, oh well, and now it's gonna fly apart when a meteor hits. Like no one's thinking of that yet. It
It's
wouldn't
such
look
a
good,
good
like you said.
looking ship. It's like you said, they use it the rest of Star Trek. It's in Next Gen, DS9. I don't know if it's actually in Voyager at any point, but even if the Miranda's not there, you've got the spiritual successor, which is the Nebula class, which is the same deal. Galaxy Saucer, nacelles underneath it, varying mission modules that can be hot swapped on the top for extra sensors, or in Reliance case, guns, which is interesting that this is the craft that's attached to the Genesis research project.
Yeah, and it gives a certain degree of backbone to David Marcus's hatred of and suspicion of the military, of like, why did they dispatch a battleship essentially to be our science vessel? What sense does that make? What are their intentions with what we're building, right? Which is the secondary drama here, which uh the movie does not comment on. You know, like the movie doesn't
Before we move
actually
on,
say anything about what the Federation intended to do with the Genesis device.
before we go on to that, because I think it would be time appropriate for the era, but had they not assigned a Miranda to it, and had they instead put no Birth class science vessel on this science mission, and the ensuing fight that would have happened there, which would have been basically Enterprise opening a fucking window and thrown a beer can
and it would
at
explode.
the line and just blown it up because it's made of explodium. Much different movie tone.
I mean, that is basically what happens in Star Trek 3. I mean, when you really think about it, you just describe that. They also had that idea in a weird way.
Births exist to die.
So let's get to Khan. We haven't talked about Khan yet at all. So
Well, I mean, the Genesis program, I cut you off there, but it's top secret. Only admirals know about it.
yeah, an interesting scene in that regard, where Kirk knows from the beginning what Genesis is, and like Spock eventually just says, like, I don't know what this is. Like, what are they researching there? And like Kirk's like, oh yeah, I have to cut you guys in because now I'm like one of the guys that sends us. You know, those guys used to send us on those cockamamie bullshit missions for the first decade of our professional careers. You remember those? I'm one of those guys now. Let's head back to my quarters. I'll show you what's up. Right?
The Genesis program, for those of you not paying it, or for anybody listening to a podcast about Wrath of Khan that doesn't know what the Genesis is, you hit a planet, or apparently just a nebula, with a atomic bomb that builds a planet that is just ripe with wonderful life. And it looks like a terrible weapon, and that's what's going to be threatened with as. But apparently, to the designers of it, it is an answer to the cosmic problems of food supply
and overpopulation.
So is this the post-scarcity United Federation of Planets, or are we not quite there yet?
I think it's an acknowledgement that the lack of scarcity, even in its prototype stage here, would require more abundance at some stage, right? And this is, how do we problem solve for the fact that eventually we're going to not have enough stuff to maintain what it is we're doing? We're going to have to reformat existing matter to be something that we can then use as life-giving matter. This is obviously before the replicator gets invented, which essentially solves that problem forever, because now you just can use energy to transfer matter and from one type into another. So like, okay, now we basically have created a Genesis device in miniature every time we replicate something. So we don't have to do this anymore. So they kind of like, they technologically innovated out of ever having to contemplate using this technology.
which I'm going to say was a unintended consequence. Like the idea of the replicator sounds cool, and it would be a neat trick with your cool new transporter effect for encounter at Farpoint. But the replicator is famously reviled by writers because it just destroys many plots before they even have a chance to breathe. That's why replicators were rationed out and phased out on Voyager to be able to create story there. This Genesis, this powerful device that is incredibly dangerous but has such strong appeal to the Federation, again, to deal with colonization issues and food supply, doesn't fit super well with the Gene Roddenberry ultra sci-fi lofty Federation is limitless, blah blah blah.
Oh, sure.
But for a movie that's written by a guy that's not the biggest detail nerd and who is out to tell a more grounded story that is has a lot of common sense but reasonable arguments and accessible plot, I think this is a great element to introduce into that. Like, hey, yeah, we're playing God here, but we kind of at some point we're gonna have to. People got to eat. People need a place to live.
And I think I would have liked, and when they finally do have like a confrontation over these very ideas, more a confrontation between McCoy and Spock on that question, which is very well handled in the movie. And McCoy giving voice to the obvious right off the rip of, holy shit, human beings cannot have access to this kind of technology. Are you kidding? Have you met us? This is basically his position. And Spock not necessarily disagreeing with him, but McCoy not being able to understand as he normally can't, that Spock isn't going to react emotionally to this the same way he is. I would have liked to hear, like, maybe particularly Kirk, maybe to interject to say, this is solving a math problem. The population of the Federation continues to grow. At a certain point, we will need to have more resources in order to house and feed and sustain this population. How do we do that when we know the number of planets that are life-sustaining in the galaxy are limited?
Dare I click the pen? Dare I try to plot doctor
as far as I'm going, brother? Like, I don't think I can improve upon it except for that.
You finish that argument there. Where do we get more space? Do we ask the Klingons to see? Do we see if the Romulans want some? We have borders. We have what we have inside Federation space, and that's it. We want more. We're going to have to make it.
But perhaps wisely, the film does not choose to overly burden itself with an explanation as to the Federation's motives, because it is not what is interesting. Real
quick before we jump off Genesis, you watch that piece of shit Discovery when they go into the far future. They're dealing with supply issues. I'm assuming that there's no mention of things got so bad we had to bust Genesis out or anything like that. Did they?
If they did, I never bothered to notice.
I hope they didn't, because it's too good for them.
We have heard Carol Marcus, the creator of the Genesis device in Voyager. So you remember the Omega particle, I'm sure. The Omega directive.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't really recall, but like Janeway goes on a monologue about how Dr. Marcus, was this incredible scientist who made this breakthrough discovery, only for that discovery essentially to be immediately weaponized or considered a weapon and impossible to implement. In her lament about like having to destroy the Omega particle, that like this is a potentially galaxy changing scientific discovery, and I must destroy it because otherwise it could be used as a terrible weapon. Khan, we gotta talk Khan. We're 50 minutes into this and we haven't talked about Khan yet. Khan, played once again by the extremely able Ricardo Montalban, who, contemporaneous to this, he was a big deal. He was on 6 Years of Fantasy Island as the mysterious benefactor there. And so people knew who he was, right? He was famous, and he did not initially necessarily want to do the movie, but was convinced after reading the script.
Convinced after they showed him all that cleavage he was going to get to pop.
That was actually a choice on the part of Meyer, because he saw how built Ricardo Montalban was, and he's like, let's get all of that chest on screen.
There's a great meme, and it's like, does your girl have, has she dyed her hair silver? Does she love jingly jewelry? Does she expose too much cleavage? That's not your girl. That's Khan.
That's Khan Noonien Singh.
I don't know anything about Fantasy Island. I saw him in Space Seed, which is a very different performance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's Wrath of Khan known for? Khan! Him screaming that, and this dude popping off quotes, which is easy to pigeonhole and then, you know, really reduce or downplay what the movie is. Watching this guy go, fucking amazing actor.
Absolutely. Especially just his first scene in the remains of the Botany Bay with Terrell and Chekhov, where he is like lamenting his story. You know, this is an explanation that is being woven into the narrative so that if you didn't watch Space Seed, you know the fuck is going on, right? Captain Kirk is responsible for me and my genetic superheroes for being here. Left us, abandoned us, never checked on us, didn't realize that the planet next to us blew up 6 months after he left, and this turned into a desert wasteland. And I'm fucking
That's what
mad
happens
about it.
when you don't have the California classes to go around and check on things after
Right.
the big guys go in. He is a big actor. There is a lot of not energy. The guy fills the room with his performance. It's a
He
big
does.
performance.
He goes big. That's what they call this. He goes as big as you can. He can act over the top of William Shatner, right? He absolutely can and does in a couple spots. And that's
but
hard.
it doesn't feel out of place. And when we sat there and
No.
watched the Augments arc and all the shit we gave Adam Smasher and the rest of these guys, and you said, you know, they were all told to basically go for Ricardo Montalban and try to achieve that. They didn't get anywhere fucking close, because as big as this guy's performing, it feels like silk on screen, right? Yeah. It flows, and he's monologuing, and everybody's scared shitless and shut the fuck up and listen to what he's saying. You know, they do a nice job in the script where he's not coming off as completely unreasonable. And I love that at times this dude's reeling his shit, and he's like, all right, I've won, and I'm going to go off and pursue my agenda. And that Kirk's able to push his fucking buttons and set him off. And all the stuff we've watched about the Augments, it really like fill in the gaps, or stuff the writers have seen Manny Cotto saw and was like, okay, look, let's really analyze this guy's performance.
Yeah. It makes so much more sense that Adam Smasher was an egomaniacal whack job that was willing to imperil what his actual goals were because he didn't like how he was like how things were going. When you see this movie, and it's just that was Khan's flaw, was that he got fucking beat by a normal ass Hume, and he did not like it.
Like what if this guy's flaws aren't his flaws? What if there's bigger things in play? What if this is a line defect across the board?
Yeah.
This is why genetic engineering was forbidden. And these are going to be low points that inflict all these guys. I love the scene where, again, you know, he's like, well, I won, and I'm going to go off. I got Genesis. I got the ship. Everything's great. You guys are limping along. Fuck you, I got better things to do. And then Kirk's able to just egg him in. And even as whatever his name is, the Matthew McConaughey looking first officer over there on Reliant.
I think it's supposed to be his son by McGivers. That's the
never
theory.
Actually named, which is very interesting.
Yes.
Shades of Nick Locarno there, right?
Right.
But he's like, hey, we got everything we need. Like, why are you letting this fucking old guy jerk us around? And he's like, fuck you, sit down. We're going to war. Daddy's got an anger problem.
There's a quote within the Memory Alpha of that Khan, the whole point was to have the movie give the vibe that when Khan shows up, Kirk is flummoxed because he hasn't thought of Khan in 15 years. And Khan is gratified because he's thought of nothing else for 15 years. And they nail it, right? Like, you get that experience. Like, when he came up, like, he literally, like, Kirk wasn't even thinking, like, oh yeah, Khan is here. He's like literally walking around this busted ass bridge yelling, "Who are they?" Right? Like, who's doing this to us?
How could you? Because if you take original series as all a in canon experience, is the time your ship got taken over and nobody died going to stand out more in your mind than when a big green ghost hand or Abraham Lincoln was fucking with your shit? Like, this dude's been through such wild stuff that, yeah, absolutely, Khan would just be a blip on the radar. Again, you can go back to to Space Seed and like nitpick, like, yeah, maybe they should have checked in. Like, you put these super dangerous people who took your fucking ship over, and you've let them just walk away with a handshake and not even agreed to disagree, but just like, hey, no hard feelings. None of you are going to face any sort of punishment. I'm going to drop you on this planet, and I'm not even going to tell my bosses about it. You know, that's the wild shit you're seeing here. I'm curious why they would pick Khan to go back to out of all the stuff out of original series. Like, was there a lot of fan attention that was always like, what happened to Khan? What happened to Khan?
This was Nick Meyer's idea. He said, I watched all this stuff and this is the only villain. That's basically it. Like, if I want a villain in TOS that I actually can like take and do something with, it's not a lot of options except him. So it's
How
played by an actor who happens to be someone people know and is very memorable. There
But
you have
like,
it.
not the Klingons, not the Romulans. Klingons are in motion picture for like a hot second because they get zapped by V'ger.
Yeah, they do. They actually reused that shot with those 3 Klingon birds of prey from that movie.
Yeah, but that's 2 Star Trek movies in a row where it's not Klingons, it's not Romulans, and for all their encounters with those guys in original series to go with the dude who's just a one-off,
but played very memorably and by an actor that you know can actually help you build some buzz for your film, you know?
The best thing that this movie does in terms of right moves for me is put Khan and Kirk at each other's throats, and it's smart enough to never put them in the same room together. The scene in Space Seed where they're fighting in engineering, and you've got a guy who's like got the strength of 5 men, 5 gorillas, and somehow Kirk's able to like wiggle and flip and hit him with a double axe handle, and then, which tickled me to no end, go up to an engineering console and pull a space pipe.
Absolutely. That's the only weapon that could work.
And clobber the fuck out of Superman with a space pipe. And the fact that these pipes are just there, like, just in case you have to get dirty in a fight.
Is there a genetic Superman who's attempting to take your ship? Please take the emergency space pipe on your right.
Is there the fucking butt probe aliens from Enterprise? Whatever. Here, there's 5 pipes that should be more than enough to handle. And do you have rogue fur traders turned pirates? You might have to jump off the warp core and bust them with a space pipe. Well, there it is. But the film acknowledging, like, these guys are so much more powerful than humans. It is insulting to put them in the same room with humans and expect there to be anything resembling a good fight.
Right, you don't even see them subdue the crew of the Reliant. It's like, yeah, they're not here right now. Like, you know, your imagination run wild, right?
I just assumed
Alpha 5.
I just assumed they sent Tyrell up there under the influence and were like, he told everybody to transport down to the surface or some shit.
Who knows, right? Who cares? They got it, right? We don't have to spend time on that. They succeeded.
I love the venom in Khan's voice as he is showcasing the scary puppet bug.
Oh, yeah.
And you know that the augments are bad motherfuckers, and for these things to have killed, what do you say, 12 of his crew?
A bunch, yeah. A sizable percentage of his crew.
Including his wife. Shout out McGivens. We've learned about the augments that, again, great writing, because all this shit in Enterprise is based off of this, and they're not villains for villain's sake. They have vision. They're Machiavellian.
Mm-hmm.
We know that when Khan was in charge of Africa or whatever, like, there were no wars. It was, this Hammurabi fucking extreme justice shit going on, but like, this is a Victor Von Doom.
Actually, right? Doom is a better comparison in my opinion. Yeah, this guy is just absolutely playing levels above everyone else.
But
It is
he views
interesting.
himself as a good guy. Here he is on this planet that initially they were excited about. Like, oh, cool, this is kind of what we were after. I don't get your sweet badass spaceship, but like, this is what we want. We want to flourish. We want to build a new civilization. And instead, it turned into shit. And you watch these people that have sworn their life to you. These are guys that he handpicked to escape Earth during the uprisings. Them dying to fucking sand chiggers or whatever the hell these things are. It hurts him.
And it made him resentful of who? The person who beat him, which is what it's really about. He was beaten by Kirk. And he cannot countenance the idea of losing to a normal human. Like, he is better than them. He has to defeat Kirk before he can do anything else. Because it's got such a large ego that the fact that it was bruised in that way, he cannot recover from. It's a great character flaw, right?
At the same time, he's not wrong. They were left there with zero checkup, and they were fucked. And Kirk is not a perfect person in this movie by a long shot. And I did see a quote in the Memory Alpha that's like, it's important. Heroes have flaws, gods do not. And it's important to remember that when you're writing these characters, right?
Kirk commits a lot of flaws. He forgot to check up on Khan. He doesn't raise shields when the Reliant comes by because he's cocky, because he isn't like, whatever, I'm just going to, it's another Federation vessel. Your level of caution is unwarranted, Lieutenant. He has to deal with the fact he wasn't in his son's life. That's that comes in halfway through the movie, and it really brings him to his low point as he considers the circumstances he's in. And of course, ultimately, all of his mistakes result in Spock dying. Really, at the end, Scotty's nephew gets killed,
which is where I wanted to go. I need the scene where Scotty's looking at Kirk like, "Why didn't we put this motherfucker in jail again? This my nephew, or whatever the hell he is, this blood relation of mine, is dead." And this is like classic. This is a school of Janeway. Captains don't say sorry. I fucked up.
Yeah,
but like a lot of blood on Kirk's hands for a variety of decisions that he has made between Space Seed and this movie.
That extended sickbay scene, which was a director's cut edition, where we get more of Scotty in grief, which I think is really important. Obviously, they add the part where you find out who this kid is, which is his nephew. It's his sister's youngest son. And when he dies, there's this great moment for James Doohan where he just says, "Why?" Right? Because he doesn't know. No one's fucking told him what's going on yet. He's been busy in engineering. And so
a normal training day, and all of a sudden you're getting rocked by phaser fire with the shields down, and people are getting sucked into space.
And I've got a bunch of children, like to describe these guys. Like, I got a bunch of 18 to 21-year-olds who I'm trying to like keep this place stitched together with, who have never seen a shot fired in any of their lives. What the fuck is going on? And one of the ones that have died was my nephew, who wouldn't abandon his post and got fucking torched for it. And the way Kirk puts it, like, Kirk obliges an answer, right? Like, to say, Khan's come to kill me for having marooned him 15 years ago. That's it.
He's got to kill. Like, was it the Klingons? Was it the Romulans? Or are we at war? Who is this? It's Khan. Who? Wait, the guy that put you in the gas chamber?
What the fuck?
Huh? He's got a... How'd he get Reliant? What?
Yeah. There is so it was the space combat, right? The initial space combat when Khan's coming through with the Reliant. His entire plan is, I'm going to feign a bunch of distress and get close enough that I can broadside Enterprise in its engine section and disable it with one salvo, so the ship's at my mercy, right? If I approach too aggressively, they're going to put shields up, right? Very naval combat. This is very like Master and Commander shit. It's all maneuver. I have to get close enough that I can effect fire, and I need to do it in a way that's casual enough that he's not going to know that I'm a danger until I'm shooting him. And the way it's not super high tech. It's just two models passing, and it's that music, man. That James Horner score. upping the tension and upping the ante in every scene before things pop off is just a phenomenal element throughout the entire movie. It makes the movie in a lot of places. And they're going through Regula 1 and it becomes kind of like at that low heartbeat and that intense synth, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? We get into the battles and we got more like orchestra, and it's, you know, giving you some of those Trek sounding themes, but it's spun way up and there's way more going on.
Talking combat, I expected there to be a lot more to the combat than there was, and I am happy that there wasn't, because there has been a real heavy lean in Trek, especially the Bad Robot secret hideout stuff, for badass space battles and like these extended conflicts. And I think the simplistic nature of, like, I think there's only like 2 engagements, right? Maybe 3. And most of it's like surprise element of, we get behind you, we hammer you, and your ass is done. Especially in that nebula, because nobody has shields.
Right.
I was expecting it to be a much longer exchange, a lot more dialogue, a way bigger piece. But again, it's a great movie. There's so much good stuff going on. You don't need to have that dominate the entire third part of the movie. You've got the shit with Kirk and his son having to patch their shit up. You got Spock dying. You got you got the Genesis planet being born. You got all this other shit that even after Khan's long dead, there's like 3 more major things that need to be addressed.
And by slowing it down and making it, if you make the ships more lumbering and make their weapons more powerful and give it more impact that way, all of your decisions in regards to how you get into combat and maneuver within it suddenly matter so much more and provide more tension. When you're super hyperkinetic and everything's fast, this is the fucking Star Wars prequel problem, right? What happened in those movies? There were tons of Jedi, and instead of making them wise samurai who were master sword fighters in the art of the subtle, they instead made them crazy, backflipping ninjas. And that was less interesting. It was far less interesting. Where, if you go too hyperkinetic in your space combat, you got too many things moving around, too fast. Things, individual things happening no longer feel like they matter very much. The scale of things is off. Here, everything matters. The lack of shields, the facing of the weapons, their ability to employ them, maneuver, like you said. Are you behind? Are you coming about? Like, what's occurring? Can you maneuver?
Do you know that your ship can go up and down that Z-axis?
Do you understand that space is 3-dimensional? Yes.
Well, and they've replaced ship's combat with a chess match.
Yes.
And again, that goes back to the perfect way to pit Kirk against Khan, because they can't get in a fist fight. Khan should fucking be able to strangle Kirk with his own asshole, right? That you're putting Superman up against Guy Gardner without a fucking ring.
Well, I mean, it's Superman versus Batman, right? And Batman's smarter than Superman, and that's how he wins. Right? I mean,
Khan physically against anybody else. That's what I'm really trying to hone in, is that it's a silly fight to have these guys against it. You got guys who can kick fucking Klingons down the hallway. Not that they've established that at this point, but making the ships into these chess pieces is the right way to do these things. And then seeing that display there made me think about the Strange New World episodes where they're using like sonar in space around the event horizon while the Gorn vessel's hunting them or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is this high suspense, like floating Red October thing, and seeing that it's not Red October they were going after, it was this. And this is a bucket of Star Trek combat style, where it's the slow lumbering ships trying to catch each other at the right angle versus, super agile ships flying around fucking dudes up.
So I want to kind of return to a few of the scenes that I think there's a ton of content to go back over. One I brought up on Discord while I was literally watching the movie last night, and that is when Kirk is visited in his apartment by Bones.
His super 80s Logan's Run apartment.
Absolutely. So everyone's amazing in this movie from the main cast, but obviously your principal actors, as always, are DeForest Kelley, Leonard Nimoy, William Shatner. And first, I think this was the first Star Trek thing I ever saw, so it wasn't as striking to me as I guess I was contemplating as I was watching this, how much older DeForest Kelley is than these other guys.
Yeah, and let me tell you, those Star Trek staple terrible civilian clothes aren't doing him any favors.
No.
70s civilian clothes.
It helps work, though, for the scene, because Kirk is obviously distressed over the fact he's having a birthday. He's turning 52 in canon on this day, and he's feeling very much in his middle age and not enjoying it. And who should pay him a visit but his old friend, Dr. McCoy, who's in fact older, right? So somebody who's been through this and can kind of speak from that perspective. And second, he shows up with two gifts. And the first one that he gives Kirk is Romulan ale. And the fact that Leonard McCoy, a Starfleet officer, gives no shits about the standard that he's probably held to as an officer in the military arm of the United Federation of Planets is like, yes, I totally have blockade runners who bring this extremely illegal space whiskey to me on the regular. Would you like some? And Kirk is so taken aback. He's just like, fuck it. Yeah, go ahead. And that he really likes it because it actually gets you fucked up, which is probably quite rare in the Anodyne Federation. This is a safe, space utopia that is like, nah, bro, I like getting drunk. Let's do some space whiskey.
Look
illegal
what I brought
space
over.
Whiskey.
I got space Drano.
I got space purple drank.
Go easy, Jim. It'll get you blind. And then speaking of blind, the second gift is a pair of eyeglasses, which we've got a classic Roddenberry moment of like, oh, what's a headache? I've never heard the word headache before. Hey, Jim, you've got a fucking wall of conquistador breastplates and flintlock fucking pistols. Clearly you like old shit, and you're going to act like you don't know what a pair of fucking glasses are.
I do like the concept of that someone in the 24th century probably doesn't know, 23rd century in this case, doesn't know what eyeglasses are. No one's worn eyeglasses in 100 years.
Unfortunately, if we're gonna get nitpicky, unfortunately, this guy who would not have been or should not have been around eyeglasses for any time in his lifetime has gone back in time 6 times? You're telling me the whole time he's rolling around Nazi Germany or whatever the fuck that thing they tried to sideload the Tomorrow Man or whatever that man from Uncle shit was. Nobody had glasses in any of those episodes. Bullshit.
But I do like the idea of like, yeah, I just prescribed you Retinox, but you're allergic, so you have to wear glasses.
And I found the most old man glasses possible. You look
They're 400 years old.
You're gonna look like Tim, what's his face, and the Santa Claus.
Tim Allen, yeah. Just the concept that Bones is just an absolute, just gives no shit, wild maniac that's in a Starfleet uniform, getting his illegal space whiskey, saving it. I'm sharing it with a member of the Admiralty. like, here, you're my boss. Do you know I do crimes? Now you're party to them.
It's genre. Again, you're supposed to watch Space Seed prior to this, and this is the guy that told Khan to fucking strangle him or cut his neck, and if he's going to cut his neck, hit that carotid artery. Like,
it's totally
within a wild operator.
This is totally within McCoy's characterization. Already prior to this, we know from the motion picture that he doesn't even want to be in Starfleet anymore. Like he was retired, he was out, and they forced him back in basically through inactive reserve. He's like bitching to Kirk when he shows up, like, "You drafted me." So the fact he's like, "Yeah, I got some illegal space whiskey. You want some?" 100% what I would expect. Like, I'm still in because we're boys and I got nothing else to do, not because I have any intention of ever doing anything else.
I like that he sees through the depression and he doesn't mince words.
Yeah, it's because he's been there, right? He's the older friend who can guide you through some of life that you've, not yet
And
experienced.
that's part of, again, you take all the zany adventures and hold it as canon. You are this generation's hero. You have accomplished the impossible. He's not saying this, but he could have, you being in that chair is a disservice to humanity. You need to be out in the fucking captain's seat. And that's kind of the same thing that
Spock says the same thing to him, which is great.
And it's what Crusher would go on to say to Picard, which is, I couldn't tie you down with that dad life. The galaxy needed you.
Yeah. And I mean, I think obviously the bromance between Spock and Kirk is there's plenty of examples in the original series of how close they are as friends. Nothing cements it quite like this film. Both in, I think more primarily in the scene when he comes down to Spock's quarters to say, we've been tasked with a mission, and he's going to try, he wants to take command, but he doesn't want to take it from his friend. And Spock offers it to him instead. And in offering it, it's like, first, let me disabuse you of the notion that I give a fuck, about, I don't have an ego to bruise. So you being in charge isn't hurting me. And second, it's also logically correct. You are the best Starfleet captain ever to exist. Anything else of you being in that chair is literally a waste of talent. You doing anything else is stupid. So you definitely need to be in charge. And stands up and says that, you're my superior officer and you're my friend. And I have always been and will always be yours. Right?
Just think in another reality where Condon, Gidim, and Reliant was just having problems with their communications, and they fly out there after all these speeches about, I'm asking you guys to get ready. We're going to have to grow up. And Spock gave me command. They just get there sorry, dudes. Our fucking communications array was apparently on the deflector dish, which we don't have. So we're just limping along. Thanks for helping us. Oh, sorry. I guess we didn't need all that dramatic prep work for after all.
You guys want to go shoot at some species we've never heard of? I'm ready. I'm amped.
This fucking torpedo launcher. We want to get these bad boys going. The surrender of command. Jump into Generation, same deal, right? You got Kirk Jones to sit in that seat and wanting it so bad, but trying to walk that high path. I'm like, no, this isn't for me. This is for the other guys. Going to Picard season 3 at the end there, where it's like, come on, just Picard, start fucking calling. I love Riker, but give me the guy doing the thing I want him to do. Put the captain in the seat.
It is really nice reflecting on Picard season 3 that Picard battles being the guy until the very end, right? He is attempting to do exactly what Kirk was attempting to do, to say, I have to allow the next generation of these people to solve this problem, because I'm not going to be around to do it much longer. This isn't, my time in this part of my life is coming to a swift end. And therefore, both the people that my juniors, when I was, we were working together, can take command of this. Not to mention, I'm trying to get 7 of 9, up in this organization. I'm trying to build up a new generation of people to do this. And it's only when there's no other option. And he looks around and is like, okay, obviously this calls upon us to do this, and therefore it calls upon me to be in charge.
Okay, guys, enough edging.
I'll let you come all over my
y'all
face.
Off. Here we go.
Gotta get it out. Just keep pumping it out.
Come on, I want the vinegar strokes.
But yeah, Kirk, Spock, McCoy is the trifecta. It's perfect in this movie. You've got McCoy giving the emotional case. You've got Spock giving the logical case. And it's awesome. It's awesome. You try to emulate this from this point forward. It's that good.
It is. It's your trip into Paul.
It's your trip to Paul Archer. It's your Picard.
And that's why Enterprise, I think, specifically recreated that.
Yeah. And then in TNG though, it was Picard and then everyone else. Right? It wasn't a trilogy. There wasn't a trinity of people there.
I don't think
spread
it
out.
was.
It was distilled more.
Picard was a consensus builder who took everybody's opinion in, and he had the best of the best, and he utilized it. Contrast that with Janeway, who would just say, okay, I made a decision, and people will go, but there's a problem, and her to fucking chew him out and say, shut the fuck up, we're doing it my way. Especially Chakotay. I don't know what happens over in Deep Space Nine.
Oh, Deep Space Nine is wild. It's like Deep Space Nine is hard to describe.
And then Enterprise, again, it's the three amigos there. It's the Vulcan, the emotional one, and then the captain hashing things out at the dinner table over very expensive looking steaks.
The costume jacket, their away team jacket, that's another very just fantastic looking. Very fantastic looking, very comfortable away team jacket I've ever seen. Very stylish with a big old collar. We're talking the collar is fully popped on these bad boys.
My wife's like, those guys look like they're going to end up real warm.
I loved the style of phaser in this movie. I love the look of it. It's the kind of like gun phaser with the little doodads. It's kind of reminiscent of the 60s, but it's clearly much more sleek, much more looks like a weapon that's futuristic.
So the Type 1 phaser from original series was like a traditional like pebble style hand phaser that would dock into the Type 2 pistol grip, which would up the capacity. I liked the original series, and I think that really the epitome of it is Undiscovered Country, that like bubbly textured stealth looking one. These phasers, they were not bad, but I'd take these things over the projectile boo 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 from Picard season 3. There's still ray gun enough to keep me in a idealized future. I want to talk about when Khan, prior to confronting the Enterprise, he gets up to the Genesis research station, because at this point he's put the earwicks in. The wax ears. These bugs are crawling in and out of, right? So let's just go through the entire Khan thing here real quick. He grabs Tyrell. He's got Chekhov. Chekhov shitting his pants when he sees Botany Bay. That moment of realization.
He's like, holy fuck, we gotta get out of here right now. Like,
I figured they were going to jump out of the shadows and clobber him in there. Like, they go back out like, bro, you should have fucking beamed your ass up. Like, why bother putting the suits on? Get on the horn. The communicators are terrible in this movie. That's the fucking disservice. Those things are ugly as fuck. They look like pancake spatulas.
Yeah, they're not good.
But I like, Khan's going through is like, oh, you motherfuckers. And Tyrell's like, what the hell's going on here? He's like, oh, you don't know? And it's like, yeah, well, Kirk didn't file any fucking reports or whatever. And, oh, this guy didn't tell you about it? Like, listen, first of all, we figure half his fucking stories are made up bullshit anyways, because it's so ridiculous. And second of all, like, again, you're just a blip, dude. But Tyrell, you know who that is, right? That's...
Yeah, remind me, though.
Dathan, Shaka when the walls fell guy.
Oh, that's right, yes. Yes.
He gets done real dirty. Him, dude, I don't even want to tell this story. It casts my family in a bad way. And it might, I don't know, might constitute as child abuse. I don't know, but that earwick going in like, I'm ready for a real powerful scene to see this bug chew its way in. And instead, it's like this big fake ass wax ear that they zoom in on this claymation bug going in. But they spill the beans. What is Genesis? I love Khan's realization that like, oh, they're not here for me. This is all a mistake. They're doing other things. Why are they here? They get to Genesis Station. The research team there already figures out that something's fucky. They don't like the way that Chekhov was talking. Great play on Khan's behalf to lure Kirk out. Like, that's the fucking, that's the play of the movie right there.
Like, and it's really on Khan's face too, of like, he came up with the perfect plan, because it was all off screen, right? He got overwhelmed. Clearly, Chekhov explained everything, right?
Sure.
Excluding that the person that's in charge of this is Carol Marcus, who Chekhov would know, most likely, was his old boss's ex-girlfriend.
Where did she? I don't know any of her history.
She's invented for this film. So there is no history beyond what is in here.
Really?
Yes. So, well, and what they've conveyed in Strange New Worlds, I suppose, is
Right.
the only other time in canon she's been used. But clearly that explanation occurred off screen. So immediately, Khan like zeroes in of like, well, if I imperil her life, fucking Jimmy's gonna come running. Right? Like I know that if I create a circumstance where she is in danger, the person who will respond is most likely this person I want to have respond.
Well, not even that. I mean, they say we're coming to get Genesis, whether you like it or not, and the order was given by James Kirk. So of course they're going to go to James Kirk and be like, "What in the fuck?"
So it even says like, of course you know they're going to try, and he has this look on his face where he's smiling and he just does this. Of course I know, because the point is for her to try and contact him, but not enough to explain anything, not enough for them actually to communicate, but just enough to make him aware of what's happening. Then we jam it, and he's going to come flying the fuck out here, no holds bar, which is exactly what happens.
How lucky for us, for wherever the fuck we are in space, that there is no other Federation starships, and Enterprise is going to be perfectly suited to come out and check this shit out. So they get
That's a bit serendipitous, but I'll take it. You know?
Sure. They get out to the station. What a great crew she has, that they're so down for the cause of whatever hippie space piece.
Yeah, they got tortured to death.
Everybody's willing to stay back and try to distract Khan while this lady and her son, this nepotistic bullshit going on, escape with Genesis. And apparently Khan just goes like full Predator mode on him and just has people bled out hanging upside down from the rafters.
Yeah. Like you up to that, it was a very interesting escalation though, because he was probably violent in some way towards the Reliant crew. He doesn't say he killed them, he says he marooned them. So they could still be technically alive.
Left him down there with all the fucking sandworms and all that other shit Voyager had to contend with.
So, that's pretty bad, but like it isn't like that he murdered them. But then we get here, it's like, okay, no, he murdered he tortured and murdered all of these people. There's nothing that he won't do, right? Let's a perfect escalation at that point to say, oh, everyone's in danger. Like there's no talking your way out of this anymore. There's no trusting this man. He is willing to do whatever it takes to get what he wants.
And these scientists with their ugly ass bell bottoms had the mental fortitude to resist the desire to tell the murderer who's currently gutting your friends where the space MacGuffin is.
When they go to the transporter room and they figure out that beamed into the cave, I think that one bit of humor really works in the film of like, we're going to go where they went. What if they went nowhere? Then this will be your big chance to get away from it all. Like,
yeah.
Because it's transporting and because it's McCoy. He doesn't like it. He's never liked it. As
well he shouldn't, for great reasons.
Even in a soulless state, he knows what's up. And, it's just that one little bit of humor to just offset all of the seriousness so that we can move on to the next piece of the puzzle. Like you said, Terrell gets really jabronied because he has to end up kind of being a noble self-sacrifice, though it does demonstrate his character. Because when they find them, but they're clearly still affected by the bugs, and the rest of the crew doesn't know that.
Which another real quick fuck up for Kirk. And granted, there's a lot going on, so I get like kind of skimming over things. But Bones is there, and Chekhov, your good friend Chekhov's like, hey, sorry, we spilled the beans on this. He put bugs in our fucking, he put creatures in us that made us do things. Like, at no point someone's like, those creatures are gone, right? Real quick, not to ruin your story, but like, whatever.
Right.
Do you have a brain control bug up your dick or something? I don't know what you're...
Do we just need to take you to sick bay? Do you want to go to sick bay? Why don't
Do
you
you
take
put
you to sick bay?
you put like an armadillo in your ass? Like, what are we talking here? Is there any chance you're going to pull a phaser and shoot me in the back? Yeah, when Tyrell like has a moment where it's like, we're Trojan horses. Who does he shoot? Is it a research staff member?
Yeah, he does. The one random research staff guy who survived.
They drew straws. He thought he was going to be lucky. Like, oh my God, I'm going to get to live. These other guys are going to get fucking savaged by this dude. Which I wonder if, like, at a certain level, there was like a conversation on the bridge back on Reliant or whatever when they're interrogating him. And it's like, I told you we should have brought the fucking bug jar.
Would have been so much easier.
Yeah.
But
he goes back into that Kobayashi Maru, the no-win scenario now, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a captain. He's got his hand forced here. He's going to have to shoot somebody. Can he shoot an innocent? How do you stop these events from unfolding? And unfortunately, he's got to, seppuku his way through it.
But it demonstrates Tyrell's character. It demonstrates his answer to the no-win scenario is self-sacrifice.
Absolutely. And if only he could have held out for another 6 seconds, because Chekhov falls over and his bug just decides it's had enough and it's gonna peace out.
Only to be immediately incinerated with a phaser, as it well should.
But it's like, oh, that plot armor just kicked in. Lucky for you,
this
Mr.
is
Chekhov.
real. This is main staff. Sorry, Paul Winfield. you are black, and therefore the one to die in this film. Some tropes, they hold up true for many decades, and that's one of them. Although I guess that does make Captain Tyrell the first African-American captain in Star Trek, doesn't it? There was a African-American Commodore, so higher ranking individual in the TOS. So, clearly there were captains, but I think this is the first time we see one on screen.
Good showing for him. I mean, he's reasonable the whole way through.
If you can fight brainwashing to kill yourself, that's pretty good,
Also a good reminder as to why by the 24th century Starfleet switched to policy where the captain stays on the ship.
Yeah. Not a good look.
I'd like, maybe that should be a skit as like the board hearing where they finally have to like make the rules call, and they'd be like, captains, they're not going to like it. These captains, they love going on the surface. It's like, we have a stack of we have an incident report stack literally as tall as the Sears building of ways that we've been fucked and the crews have been fucked and innocent bystander planets have been fucked by the captain going down. Like, it is over. We cannot do this anymore.
So the big dramatic scene happens right after that, where Kirk actually loses his cool, right? He has been gotten to because he's watched Tyrell kill himself. Tyrell accidentally killed someone else. The crew's the Reliant team's been tortured to death. Like
Genesis team.
Yeah, the Genesis team's been tortured to death. Like, he gets the communicator that Tyrell had on and is like, Khan, you bloodsucker. Like, you've managed to kill almost everyone else, but like a poor marksman, you keep missing the target. Great line. Like, I know the Khan yell is the thing that everyone remembers, but just the delivery of how pissed he is, like the ways, Khan, you bloodsucker. Like, he's pissed. He's had a fucking enough of this guy.
They've already done the PSYOP too, the coded subtext of Spock relaying that it's only going to take a couple hours to fix Enterprise. Right?
Yes. Days seem like hours. Yeah.
Part of the plan, and this is, you could say it's Kirk selling the grift, right? That he really is mad and that he's feeling victimized, but I think that this outburst is genuine. And again, he's just watched 2 more people die. Like, even as he's plotting his trap, bad stuff is happening to everyone around him. And again, it's for a multitude of reasons that have all been his own decisions that brought us there. Not imprisoning Khan or bringing him back to the Federation for justice. Not checking in on that planet. Not putting the fucking shield on as the book dictates, as exemplified by Saavik. All this stuff, that's a lot of blood that's being dumped on his hands. Back to Scotty bringing his nephew in. I like that Scotty's decision is like, oh shit, my fucking sister's going to be so pissed Forget about sickbay. I need to get some bang for the buck. I'm gonna go right up to the bridge with his body.
Yeah, everyone needs to see that this happened.
In the 24th century, this role will be achieved by Neelix bringing hors d'oeuvres onto the bridge during a red alert. Back in the old days, the engineers just brought their dead nephews up.
Let's get to the end. Okay, so we've hit a ton of highlights here. You know, we're on an hour and 40 minutes already talking about this film. We've talked about this film about as long as it is. We haven't talked about really the grand sacrifice that pins the whole movie together. We have the duel within the nebula. This is where Kirk is able to demonstrate his superior ability at this thing that he has dedicated his life to, and to demonstrate, like, no, I'm the best who's ever done it. I'm going to beat this guy. I'm going to beat this guy by remembering what I remembered at the beginning, which is he doesn't actually understand space combat. This is new to him. There are things that he is probably just not thinking of. Like, he didn't think to change the prefix code on the Reliant so they could order it to drop its shields, because why would he even know that's a thing? So, yeah, he's probably not thinking that I'm going to hold my position and then just go Z minus 10,000 meters and then just come right back up behind him and say, gotcha, bitch. So great thought process, right? And that fact that Spock is the one that's helping him sort of figure out what to do. As we've already mentioned, the ship's damage is not going to get away from the detonation of the Genesis device. What does Spock do? He goes down and sacrifices himself. He does the thing with the Katra and puts it in to McCoy. But ultimately, you're not really sure what that's about, but you are seeing him go into this radioactive chamber that we know is dangerous, that no one can survive, and do whatever he's doing to this fucking Chernobyl thing. It's exposing him to all this radiation to get the ship to be able to engage its warp drives.
That's actually where they keep the modem, and he has to go down there and power cycle it.
Yeah, he has to power cycle the modem. Yeah.
10 seconds, plug it back in.
Reconnect, redial. Just in time. Sulu takes off.
We
have one of the best scenes ever filmed, in my opinion.
So good, it gets its own Hallmark Christmas tree ornament.
So good, they have been trying to reach this high ever since. And just everything about going down, no music. Spot, the way that the information's conveyed, he's like trying to get him out. It's like, he'll die. And Scotty has got to be the one to say he's dead already. Okay. He's been exposed to so much radiation. There is no helping him. So this is goodbye. Scene's been set. These two men, who clearly are as close as brothers, are saying goodbye. Spock has to have his dignity. He straightens his uniform as he struggles to get up, right? He's clearly overwhelmed. He can't see. He's blind. They convey that. He wants to know if it worked. He's happy to know that it has. And all this is going on. Kirk is just overwhelmed, so overwhelmed with emotion, he's not emotional. You know?
Yeah.
He's just busted. It's because he knows what's happening. There's no hiding it. There's nothing he can say. There's nothing he can do.
He thought he just cheated an impossible situation.
Right? He thought he cheated death again. Mr. I cheated on the Kobayashi Maru. He's never had to face the no-win scenario.
He just did face the no-win scenario, and he won by, again, trickery and cheating his way through this thing with Khan. He's riding at an all-time high, only to find out that while he survives, his actions have again brought more death and ruin to those around him.
I mean, there's so many good lines in this movie, particularly from Kirk, as he reflects on he realizes he has actually never faced death, and now he has. His best friend is dead. The cost has finally reached him, right? Spock was the closest thing he had to family. And he's gone. And obviously there's a lot happening here with his son entering the picture as a balm on the wound. But I love his, he's humbled, right? In the end, to say, like, I made sport of laughing at death. I know nothing of it. I have no concept of it.
And again, you got TV actors here, right? with arguably characters that they're playing or have been known to be playing. But it just becomes the perfect combination in the scene with a piece of glass between them to just push this emotional dagger that I can't imagine anybody was ready for out in the theater when this thing hit in 82.
I mean, if you know he's going to die, you don't know how this just hits so hard.
And again, the absence of a score over this, like, it's just a stark, intense thing. As you said, they've been chasing to hit this height ever since. I dare say the only other time that they have come even a half as good a scene as this is Alan Rickman in Galaxy Quest when the guy dies and he lays the grab Thar's hammer line out there.
It like turns his whole character and finally like convinces him what he's done his whole life has had purpose.
Right. And it's a direct reflection of this. That's possible because, again, you had, Leonard Nimoy and Live Long and Prosper haunting him and this other stuff. And it's a real nice rework of that entire situation there. So terrific.
It really is a iconic scene in film history. And I don't think Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner would make anyone's list of their top 100 actors, yet here they are, absolutely crushing when the situation called for them to have to hit it out of the park. And they might be TV actors, but they elevated this thing. And I don't want to give short shrift to the speech that Kirk gives at the funeral either, which is also, I think, perfectly delivered and perfectly written. I'm going to read it real quick. It's just like, I watched this 4 times, this speech. We are assembled here today to pay final respects to our honored dead. And yet it should be noted that in the midst of our sorrow, this death takes place in the shadow of a new life, the sunrise of a new world, a world that our beloved comrade gave his life to protect and nourish. He did not feel the sacrifice a vain or empty one, and we will not debate his profound wisdom at these proceedings. Of my friend, I can only say this: of all the souls I have encountered in my travels, his was the best. His was the most human. And the way it's delivered, he's just almost can't get through it, right?
Yeah.
But he does. He fights through it and pays like this incredible compliment to that's intended as a compliment to Spock. And it's so good.
I'm glad that the Khan portions and the death of Spock could be there because I think if Kirk's a daddy was like the B plot, or there wasn't so many other strong, great plots, I don't think it would have been my favorite thing. But everything else going on in this movie, and hey, I just found out I'm a dad, compounds really good. And what'd you say, is it David Marcus or whatever it is?
Correct. He knew he was a dad. He just always stayed away from the son. So his being a dad was not new to him. It was clear through dialogue that Carol asked him to not be involved in
it's
his life.
New to the audience, because if Carol Marcus was invented for this and David Marcus and the pre-existing knowledge that he had a son, which is a hell of a retcon, but still done well within the margins that you want to color in. It's good. And the lady playing Carol Marcus, I think she holds up her role as an empowered lady in the future, dealing with big concepts and dangerous things. I think she does a great job. Yeah. I love the scene in the hallway where David takes everybody to go show off Genesis, and he's like, hey, what the fuck? Like, we gonna talk about this shit here? And they have this like, I didn't want you in his life and blah, 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 blah. And there you got Chekhov laying on the floor with a napkin over his ear where this bug just fell out of his fucking ear. Yeah. They were just talking. I'm like, hey, man, you all right? Yes, I just want to lay here for a second. And I can only imagine he's just laying there like with his eyes closed like, shit, please just walk in another fucking room. I just had a bug chewing on my fucking ear.
Have I
I'm
not
in
been
agony.
tortured enough? I don't want to hear about your middle-aged
Not gonna-
relationship trauma.
My old boss bitching at his baby's mom. Well, I'm just trying to leave my fucking captain. I just watch him blow his brains out all over the floor. I watched everybody in that room in this Saw torture porn scene where people are upside down getting fucking gutted. Like, please just go argue somewhere else. Please.
This isn't a thing we have to tell people to see. There's no human that's going to listen to this podcast that doesn't know what Wrath of Khan is or hasn't seen it before. But if you haven't watched it in a while, do yourself a favor.
Go to Blockbuster.
Go to Blockbuster. Go pull this thing off the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
Get
yourself some Mike and Ike's, maybe some Butterfingers from the bar.
Just enjoy, man. Like, this is the reason Star Trek relaunched itself into an entirely new era that all of us grew up on, essentially, that will listen to this, right? Like, I don't think I have a lot of TOS OGs in here. So this is it. This is the reason why. And
when was Return of the Jedi?
84. It was 78, 82. 82. 78, 80, 82. Yeah.
When did
this came out in 82 as well.
Right. So which one came out first? What a year for sci-fi. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I think Star Wars came out first, but I don't know.
May 25th, 83. So
okay.
There was a little bit later. Of buffer there, but people must have went wild when this fucking thing came out.
I mean, it made it cost $12 million. It made $97 million. Now that is inflation adjusted $300 million. Okay, which, for a domestic only release, that is solid, right? That is 5 times. That's more than 5 times your money. That is more like 7 times your money. So it made a ton. But yeah, if you haven't watched this in a while, go watch it. Enjoy. Can't say enough good things about it. One of the best movies ever made, in my opinion.
Plot so good it made a Vulcan lady cry.
One single solitary tear, just like you need.
If I remember, she's mixed blood, right?
Saavik? No. Pureblood Vulcan.
There's no Vulcan ancestry. I'm sorry, Romulan ancestry there?
I mean, it could be, but she's not intended to be anything but a full-blood Vulcan.
Mm.
And you are a full-blooded, wonderful member of our community if you are on our Patreon and, slipping us a few dollars every month to encourage us to make some extra content. We're happy to do that. And we also love all of our other free people listening who will eventually be listening to this as well. Listen, thanks for telling people about V'ger Please. Spread the word. Let us know if you liked this review. Let us know what you want us to do next for extra stuff. We'll see you next time.